What is up, fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my fantabulistic, equally thermonuclear AF co-host, Grant Hughes. Before we hop into Hot or Not 2.0, which will probably be another two-podcaster, but Hot or Not 2.0, where we respond to your hot takes and we throw a couple of our own at each other and determine whether they are just a fact, which would be not, or there are levels to the hotness. Spicy as in, oh, this is intriguing, but it might be true, or this is off the rails, and what drugs are you on? We would like to consume some. But before we get started, please remember to subscribe to us wherever you're consuming us. If you're checking us out on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe, more importantly, comment, help the algorithm love us back a little bit. Also, subscribe to us wherever you get your audio podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Apple, Google, and cross-sub. Both platforms. So YouTube plus a podcast player, download every episode. That helps out a ton. If you've done both those things, please consider recommending us to people. You can shout us out on Twitter. We got one today. I retweeted it. Very kind. Tell people about us, word of mouth, that they should check us out. And this seriously unserious NBA community that we are trying to build. And speaking of which, join our Discord because Grant is in there and he has said stuff. He's not just in there lurking. He has said stuff. The link to that is in the podcast and YouTube description. And finally, follow all of our socials. Those are on screen on YouTube, or they're in the podcast and YouTube descriptions as well. Very quickly, though, at Hardwood Knocks on Twitter and TikTok, at Hardwood_Knocks on Instagram. Grant, hot or not, how are you doing? It doesn't really work here, but how are you doing?
That's a hot question. I feel like I'm Andrew Nemharding right now, which just means I'm really just out of my head, delirious.
It sounds like a sexual thing too, a little bit.
No, it sounds bad, doesn't it? We're recording this just a few short hours after Andrew Nemhard turned into like a better version of Tyrese Halliburton and killed the Warriors. So it's a great way to feel. We should all feel like Andrew Nemhard felt against the Warriors.
Yeah, I'm so Andrew Nemhard right now. So to get into this hot or not.
You found it. Congrats. You got it. You got there. Good job.
We should look. We have one that's tangentially rated on him. I think I put it. I don't know why I put it at the. Oh, here it is. From if you don't care about me starting, but that's pretty topical. And I'm sure you watched your team get absolutely slaughtered by the Tyrese Halliburton-less Indiana Pacers. So from Austin, I'm framing hot or not. Do the Pacers have any shot at having two all rookie players, Mathurin and Nemhard? Has this happened in recent history / ever? This came in last minute. I did look it up. It happened recently. John Morant and Brandon Clark did it. So it's happened before. So that part of the question is pretty straightforward.
Well, first of all, since I copied and pasted this onto my own doc from the one you sent me, that's a real surprise, hot or not, but I'm prepared. I'm prepared to go in for this. I think there's a decent chance Nemhard's going to have to really work to get. Mathurin's like a lock, right? I mean, he's other than Banchero, I think he's probably
a chance that he's just rookie of the year.
Yeah, right. So yeah, he's got a great all rookie shot. I don't know. There's a lot. The thing is, so we have a related question later about some of the best rookies this year being guards, shooting guards specifically. There's going to be a fair amount of competition for an all rookie spot in the backcourt. So, if he plays the Warriors every night, excellent chance. But like you said, it's pretty rare. So I'm going to need to see another couple weeks or a month of this. And the opportunity may not be there, with the Pacers healthier. Although if they trade Buddy Hield, I don't know, maybe there's a spot there.
And also Duarte, before he was injured, wasn't really good.
Right. Yeah, that's the other thing. So you should get an opportunity. But I need to see a little more before I can get there. There's a lot of good guards in this rookie class. So I'm not quite sold on him. That probably is just being bitter over what he did last night.
I think this is hot just because it's kind of early, but I don't think it's too hot. And yeah. Caitlin Cooper, Vinny Cornrows had wrote something about Nemhard. I think it was last week. So he was like, this has not been like a steady detonation, but it's been a steady stream of contributions from him. And I think when you watch him play, there's a reason to give him minutes where it's even if you don't make moves, well, should Buddy Hield and do you need to prioritize ever playing a TJ McConnell over him? I'm going to say, if I had to predict, I'm going to say that he makes one just because I think it helps that with the all rookie teams, positions just don't even matter. Right. I think unless I'm wrong, I second guess myself on that every single year. Yeah. Rookies clear. The positions don't matter. So I think that really helps him. And there's even if he doesn't make an all rookie team, I'm just in. There's a field. The Warriors were trapping him at half court and he was just this is fine.
How wild is that?
he has like so many different like ways to maneuver on ball in his arsenal. He was hitting step backs, looks very comfortable getting through traffic. And I watched more than just the Warriors game of him. So I don't know if he makes an all-rookie team because, like you said, there's a lot of just like talent.
Yeah.
Are there 10 rookies better than him right now? I mean, and like I might be just a prisoner of the moment. I'm just going to say, oh no, he's clearly been one of the 10 most impactful rookies. But like even in AJ Griffin, a Walker Kessler, like Atari Eason, like these are guys that aren't getting a lot of national love at the moment, but they've still been really good, and so like they might be in the conversation. I'm going to say it's hot, but it's not too hot.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I forgot about the position thing too. I mean, I think we would agree that like
clearly that's why we keep positions on the regular All NBA, right?
Yeah, right. Like Banchero, Mathurin, Ivy, Shaden Sharp, Keegan Murray.
Dyson Daniels is going to get love for that.
Daniels, Williams, AJ Griffin, probably Kessler, Eason. You said. I mean, Jeremy Sohan, maybe. Duran, Jabari Smith. We have that's rough that we have to go that far down the list. But actually, he's been shooting it a lot better. We shouldn't shit on Jabari Smith, but there's a lot of good rookies this year so far. I mean, a couple will get hurt, a couple will lose time. So there's a shot. I agree, hot, but not like, you need to be committed for thinking this. I'll go back to the top here because Devin Booker is your guy. And the Suns are your favorite team on the planet, and you always pick them to win the title, except when you pick the Nuggets. Hot or not, Devin Booker is the best mid-range scorer in the league. I'm going to be specific with that wording because I think that's important here. Feel like this is from Usher, if I didn't say that. I feel like it's a tight race between him and KD, and honorable mention to DeRozan.
I really appreciate that Usher listens to this podcast. I'm sure he has like a very busy schedule, so it means a lot that
between all the dancing, I don't know how he has time.
So this is topical because I just did an article on which players are adding the most value as shooters, and I broke it down by zone, corners, above the break threes, and then mid range. Like anything outside the paint was what I was looking at. Devin Booker does not grade out statistically as the most valuable mid range scorer. That is Kevin Durant, who, by the way, is like adding below average value from three, both areas. But he's just like so far and away like the best mid-range shooter in the game right now, like 55% on his mid-range jumpers or whatever it is that he wins that category. DeRozan is number 2 and Devin Booker is number 3. And so it's like the 3 people that you would expect to be in there are there. And if Steph took more of them, I feel like you probably just expect Steph to be in there. I will say when I watch him get to his spots and there's like more changes in cadence, I prefer his mid-range arsenal to DeMar DeRozan's. I also will say that Kevin Durant is one of the greatest basketball players of all time, and he just has absurd handles. But what I will also say about Devin Booker is just like, there's just something that, not that I trust it more, but I guess there's more nuance to the way that he's getting to his mid-range jumpers. And so if you were trying to weight difficulty with craft and like not having the same physical tools as being a 7-footer who just rise up and fire over everybody, I really don't want to dilute what Kevin Durant does. The answer is Kevin Durant is the best mid-range scorer in the league. But Devin Booker and me would be number 2. And I get so much joy out of watching Devin Booker just carve up defenses from that in-between range.
Yeah, it's definitely Durant. And I was open to if you had a case for either of DeRozan or Booker. And by the way, that is where the discussion ends, I think, is those 3 guys. I think what does it for me is, so you said Durant, he's at 55% on about 7 mid-rangers a game. DeRozan right under 50% on almost 10 mid-rangers a game. So volume, I mean, that matters if you're hitting a decent percentage. Booker's at 47% on a 6.4. So he shoots the fewest, generally speaking. The thing that just tips it to KD is if you're just using NBA.com's zone filters, there's also non-restricted area paint shots. And Durant shoots 61.5% on those shots.
Holy
so just
fuck.
the shorter mid-rangers, which is insane. And he takes almost 5 of those a game, which is more than either of the other 2. And like DeRozan, for example, is under 40% on those shots. Booker's just under 50%. So Durant's like 10+% clear on the most volume they're still mid-rangers, kind of. They're kind of little flips and floaters, but I'm counting that as kind of a mid-range thing because like DeRozan gets to those, like those are shots he likes to get to too. But I agree that Booker, there's something of like DeRozan's the real technician because he just his footwork is incredible, and he gets his back to the basket, and he can turn either shoulder, all that stuff. It's kind of more impressive than Durant in a way, because Durant just can rise up and no one can contest it. But Booker, even as they were getting smoked by the Mavs last night, and Booker was like the only guy the whole Mavericks team was guarding, he still just has, I don't know how you have to qualify it because you cannot quantify it. He just has the ability to size up a defender from a dead stop and get to a spot like with maximum efficiency. And it's just like attacking the lead foot. It's waiting for the guy to turn his head to look for a screen. He's just like, he's really just has maximum focus at all times. And that's part of the reason that, because he doesn't rise up really high or anything like that. And he's just
jumper's pretty looking though. He might have the prettiest looking jump shot in the league. I'm trying to think of DeRozan might be there too.
But he just, he just has a true, it's not a knack, because I feel like it's a honed skill, because he's so technically sound and such an opportunist and just exploits so like if Booker's your favorite mid-range shooter, like more power to you. But Durant, the percentages are just like, we can't argue. So that's a pretty hot take.
That's a good point on, but yeah, it is just because Kevin Durant exists. It's probably too hot, but I think it's Devin Booker so good. You made a good point on him though. He has like this 0 step speed.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because you like DeMar DeRozan. I don't want to call him more of a slog when he's getting there, because there's like a smoothness and a fluidity. Mm-hmm. There's more of an unpredictability of what Devin Booker can do, because he doesn't need the head of steam. Like he can just be at a standstill and get going that way. And also, I don't know if you have a player who you think is the prettiest looking jump shot. I'm wondering like how much is this season? Am I just like traumatized from watching like campaign shooting in the corner where it's like his arm is like reaching into the stands before like finishes his motion? But I think he is just one of when you look at freeze frames, like he has one of the prettiest looking jump shots in the NBA.
I mean, for me, I think Klay still is just like, it's a technically perfect shot. There's like no wasted energy anywhere. One of my favorite things is Klay was the only guy that played well for the Warriors last night. When he catches it high, like when he catches it at head level or above and doesn't dip it, and it's just a wrist flick, that's like kind of some of my favorite shots. And not a lot of guys do that with the high catch and just no dip and the ball's out of your hands. I mean, Steph, Anthony Simons shoots a really pretty ball. It's a little different. Even Donovan Mitchell, I think. Donovan Mitchell, the ball comes out real feathery. And it's like effortless elevation. I wish we focused more on some of the aesthetics sometimes, because that's really like what jumps out, I think, a lot, aside from the stats and who's good and who's not, just like the pure, form of some guys' shots. I think, that's kind of one of my low-key favorite things to look at.
Let's get to this one from It's Allen. I'm very interested to hear your thoughts on this. Hot or not, the Hawks and Grizzlies are quickly becoming the Dame/CJ Blazers of this era, meaning they all could have great regular season records, but in the playoffs, they lack the top-end talent to win a title. Younger teams such as the Pelicans and Cavs have already passed them up with higher upside in this regard and will continue to widen the gap as time goes on.
So this is a little too hot for me, specifically with respect to the Grizzlies. I think it might not be that hot of a take for the Hawks. But just to focus on the Grizzlies, I think the issue I'm having is that I think Ja right now is pretty close to as good as Lillard has ever been. And I think and if you look at just like, their age 24 seasons, or because Lillard came into the league 2 years later, or if you look at their second season, or, their similar age or similar experience seasons, Ja is basically better than Dame by most advanced metrics, however you slice it. And, Dame has had great years, but I don't know what you think about this. I feel like Dame kind of topped out as like, maybe he's the 8th best player in the league or 7th or something like that. And I feel like Morant that's kind of where he's living right now. He's a top 10 consideration. He's a fringe MVP guy. Last year, I think he's there this year, although he's cooled a little bit. So you have that, but you also have, I think, like Bane, for example, is just a much more sensible fit alongside him than McCollum ever was for Lillard, because the skill set was so duplicative. Mm-hmm. And the other factor is the Grizzlies have defenders. Like Jaren Jackson Jr. is a type of player that those Lillard teams just never, ever had. And they have wings, and Dylan Brooks, one of my least favorite players to watch play. is still the guy that you can throw at a big wing. And even Bane is a much more capable guy defensively. So I think the Grizzlies are honestly more well-rounded and more complete and fit better than any of those Blazers teams really ever were. And I also think Ja is probably about as good as Lillard ever was right now. So I take the point on the Hawks, not too hot there. But man, like the Grizzlies, like think of it this way: the best differential any of the Blazers teams had during the Dame era is like plus 4.6, and the Grizzlies were plus 6.2 last year, and reached a conference semifinals and were competitive. And yeah, Trae and the Hawks feel combustible. That Eastern Conference Finals run felt kind of phony now. But yeah, so yes for the Hawks, or not too hot for the Hawks, but a little hot on the Grizzlies, I think.
I would echo most of that. I think you're probably underselling Dame's peak and the fact that the Blazers just like they wouldn't look. The Grizzlies did something the Blazers never did under Neil O'Shea, and that was spend on a backup point guard with Tyus Jones. And so I think their depth has helped that out a ton. I don't know how to frame that around the Hawks because like we're in year one of Dejounte Murray and Trae Young, and there's probably been some organizational failures here. I don't think, would you view Trae Young as that guy who's going to top out like Lillard did is no more than just in it. And it's, not a singular season span, and maybe we're underselling Dame's peak. I think he was consistently in the top 10 discussion, but it was never just like is Dame a top 5 player. Trae is never really, he's been like mentioned like in cursory discussions about the MVP. We're also still just so early into these guys' careers. I'm curious how much it matters. I would say though, it's not too hot for the Hawks, I guess, but like, are the Hawks supposed to be on that level? I know Dejounte Murray's been good for them and Trae has struggled a lot this year. And there's maybe there's drama with him and Nate McMillan. We're not sure. They both like sort of deny it, but I'm struggling to, I say it's not too hot for the Hawks. I just don't know that it applies to the Hawks is my point. If you want to look at their best players only going to lead them to really good regular seasons, I think maybe that could be fair, but like we've seen Trae light it up in the playoffs. We saw Dame light it up. Like he's won entire series,
right?
By the way, but I would say my strongest take is that it's way too early for the Grizzlies on that. I do think that I don't know if it's a matter of consolidation, but like maybe it is Desmond Bane, but like they need like another, they might, I mean, Desmond Bane is just so good. So they might have it in Desmond Bane, but they're deeper. And I think that matters a ton too. I still think Jaren Jackson Jr.'s offense can be uneven. And it feels like they do need that wing still. Maybe that's Zaire Williams. Maybe it's not. He has yet to play this season. So, but it's definitely way too hot for the Grizz.
Yeah, I think just one last thing to add to that is the similarity between some of those or most of those Blazers teams and like say, I mean, it's kind of unfair because again, the sample's so small in terms of how many seasons we have to look at, but their comparison with the Hawks also kind of aligns with these are one-way operations. Like the best version of the Hawks are like a top 3 offense and it just, bottom 5 defense. That's really the Blazers blueprint for like most of the last 10 years.
It's not the Hawks blueprint this year though.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is like, well, what are they? I don't know. But the Grizzlies are not that team. The Grizzlies are just going to be a very good defense indefinitely, I think. So that's the other thing that kind of sets them apart to me. This is from Unbiased Pistons fan. Hot or not, Michael Porter Jr. would go, I love this one, would go unprotected and unselected in an expansion draft. We're talking expansion drafts now. The contract plus health would be something Denver may want to redo on, and other teams wouldn't be willing to start a franchise off with all this uncertainty and all the money that it costs for that uncertainty.
That's not too hot. We got killed. I posted a clip of the Bruce Brown versus Michael Porter Jr. discussion we had. There were a lot of people in Discord who agreed with us, and there are people on YouTube who said Bruce Brown no-brainer, but we got killed for our take since then because Bruce Brown hasn't played well since we recorded that. But the contract and the back issues and like the inconsistent defense where he could be a defensive playmaker and people point out, oh, the Nuggets defense is better with him on the floor. And it's like, all right, well, look at what they're surrounding him with, where it's probably 2 of Aaron Gordon, Bruce Brown, and KCP at all times. Like and Jamal Murray's always been, maybe not so much this season, a little bit more underrated defensively. So they've put him in positions to succeed. And then when you pulled him out of those positions, it hasn't looked that great. And there's also the air of, well, what would he be on offense without Jokic and Jamal Murray, or even one of those guys there? Or he's played without Jamal Murray, at least partly, but without Jokic there, like, can he handle more self-creation? Can he set up teammates? And so you're looking at someone who is paid like a max player and he is only in year 1 of that 5-year extension. So he has 4 years left, the final of which is non-guaranteed. But it's still a pretty sizable guarantee. It's 12 million right off the bat of 40.8. So I mean, it's like 25%, a little bit less, 20%, whatever it is. Would he be eligible in an expansion draft? Is actually might be the hotter take, because I think the expectation would be he goes unselected. So why would we risk bad optics or bad juju behind the scenes with him? That might be the spicier take, that the Nuggets would actually put him up in the expansion, because you are allowed to protect enough players to where if you don't protect Michael Porter Jr., it's glaringly obvious that you just wouldn't value him.
Yeah, I think, to me, really, what the question's really asking is he a negative value player on his contract, right? Because what it presupposes is you're giving him, you're offering to give him away, and no one will take it, which is like not just negative value, it's negative, negative value to all 29 teams theoretically, because the expansion, team is picking from the bottom of the barrel. That's a little unfair, but so I think it's a little too hot. But like, so the talent is there. This is kind of just rehashing the Bruce Brown comparison, but like, the guy's 24 and he's shot 42% from 3 on good volume, and it's all just health. Because it's like, theoretically, let's say we resuscitate the Bobcats or some team like that, and you're saying they will not take him, even with just whatever the percentage chance is that he plays really well and you can trade him for something. Like, I don't know. I would, if I'm an expansion team, I'm going to take him, money and health issues and all, just because that's not the type of player that's usually available in that situation. Because of the upside, usually you're just getting retreads and guys that don't have that level of potential. So I think it's a little too hot, but like, point taken, there is a real discussion to be had of whether he's just a straight up negative value asset.
If there was an amnesty, would you use it on him?
He's high on the list, right? Like, I don't know there's not a lot of other guys. I think if after this season we just were, having health questions again, or, he didn't put up big numbers and didn't factor in the playoffs, then I would probably think about it.
That's such a tough one. This is also kind of a tough one. Rome 8180, hot or not, Donovan Mitchell doesn't make the Cavs significantly better than what they would have been with internal development anyway. It's not that he's not a very good player. It's just that what they really needed to become a title team is a two-way wing. That's the reason the Cavs are 7.3 points better with him off the court, and it's not just random statistical noise. Or, to phrase it another way, hot or not, the Cavs should have waited for a more ideal trade than the Donovan Mitchell acquisition.
So I think there's a lot of good points here that I don't disagree with, because we've talked before several times about how, it is the three, that wing spot. You need someone who can guard. You need someone who can make catch and shoot threes. Like, that is to me the clearer need, or at least it seems that way. This also kind of presupposes that like that type of player is easy to get, or would have become available, or that they could have traded for that guy. I don't know if that's true necessarily. So then this is the point you make a lot too. So this is too hot for me. I'll circle back to that, because I think you need multiple guys if you're going to do anything serious in the playoffs that can find you a shot, find themselves or find a teammate a shot. And Darius Garland can do that. Donovan Mitchell can do that, but that's kind of it. Unless and until Evan Mobley develops that skill set, which is asking a lot, because in theory, this guy's going to anchor your defense also. And just, there's a lot on his plate. So I think the second, or, the 1A, 1B thing with him and Garland is kind of a necessary component of whatever the optimal version of this Cavs team is. But it is true that, like, we talked about the Lillard McCollum Blazers. Like, that was a comparison a lot of people made when the Cavs made this trade, is now you got two small guards that are mostly defined by offense. And that kind of tilts the sort of, I don't know, the strength and weakness things of your team pretty far in a certain direction. And so fortunately, and this is what we also said at the time, you have Evan Mobley, and he's like your get out of jail free card, because he can just plug all the holes if he develops as people think. So it's a little too hot. And some of that statistical stuff is noise because I'm pretty sure that differential is down to minus 2.9 now from 7.3, and it has not been that long since this question was asked. So it's too hot, but there's also a lot of sense in it, in that, Mitchell is not the best possible guy to have gotten. I do think he's the best possible guy that they actually realistically could have gotten or could expect to get, if they weren't going to just go with internal development.
Yeah, and it's too hot for me. I would say it's fair because if you thought that wing player was going to become available via trade and that you could acquire him, then yeah, you would wait. But like, there's danger in waiting when you think that you could be this good already. And I would also, the only thing I would just add to what you said, and you kind of touched upon it, is it's not just that his on-off differential has gotten even better. It's that it's bad for all of the top four guys right now. The Cavs are better with all four of them not on the court. And I think a lot of that has to do with the stop and start nature of their season, where Darius Garland missed time, then it's Jared Allen's missing time, and you've been, now Dean Wade is missing time, and also like there's a game where they started Dean Wade and Lamar Stevens, and you were cycling through different options at the three. You tried out Karis LeVert there. That wasn't a lineup that made it didn't make a ton of, when you were going from a talent perspective, it was okay. Karis LeVert's your best player, but like it always kind of just never made sense as a fit. And I think that coupled with, okay, well then these guys are all still new to each other, I think we'll see this even out over time. And the fact that you've been able to win like sort of the one guard minutes, that's exactly why you trade for Donovan Mitchell.
Right.
Is because even if it's only Darius Garland carving up in the one guard minutes, you're still ensuring that you can have those minutes or you can just basically delete all the minutes in which you don't have a star guard on the court. And so that I still would have made the deal. And I think because you have Donovan Mitchell, you don't need the superstar three. It's almost easier to plug this hole at the three than it would have been if you said, well, we need a star wing. You don't need that anymore. You just need someone who be nice if they could shoot. But I think what you need more than anything is point of attack defense from that wing spot. And while that's still hard to fill in the wing spot, it's a lot easier to fill than saying we need to go trade for Jaylen Brown right now or someone along those lines.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Like the fungible, I need a guy that's going to shoot 37% from three and be like a plus defender at a wing spot. Like, that's way below, the best wing there is, which is like, Jason Tatum or something like that. That's a totally different category. But like the fungible version of Donovan Mitchell, or like the scoring combo guard, is like way worse than you're just talking six man, basically, at that point. So they did the hard thing. They did the big thing first. They're working big to small. They got a star, like the Daryl Morey approach to roster building. Just get the star and you can go find the guy that's going to make, a couple threes a game and guard. Like that's. And
you found someone who's okay working off the ball so that you can test out stuff with Mobley. And I just don't know, when you watch the final, like the closing kick of this team last year, they needed literally everything Donovan Mitchell brings. And I'll just throw out a name here, but like, how much better do you feel about this team's playoff chance if just Josh Richardson's on the roster right now? Honestly, like if they made a Josh Richardson trade.
It fills a need for sure. And that's the other thing is like, there's a lot of, you could do better than that in theory. Like, there's a lot of Josh Richardson types and, better versions of that.
They just don't have like the assets. I'm trying to think of a team that would.
That's the argument is getting the guy that, working big to small means you spent big. And so your assets are kind of depleted to go do that.
And no one's like being tricked into thinking Isaac Okoro is, oh, look at this like pleasant mystery box project now. Like, right, okay, that ship is kind of sailed.
Yeah. The jury is in on that. We've been doing a lot of backcourt talk, so I think this is a good one too. I'm curious what you think about this, because I really kind of struggled. This is from Glad. The Klay Thompson and Steph backcourt is not a top 5 backcourt anymore.
Wow, we should have skipped this. We should have had me throw this at you. I think when you're doing these things, if like let's use Luka Doncic as an example. If you're considering him a point guard, like how much does the one player uplift the best backcourt? And I think that Steph, who is one of the top 3 MVP candidates in the league right now, one of the 3 best players in the league right now, he almost guarantees you top 5 entry. But when you do start to go through the list of the dual pairings, where now you have Dejounte Murray and Trae Young, maybe Trae Young hasn't played well enough to ensure that's a conversation. But we just talked about Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. They have to be up there. Like, I guess the names that stand out, like, is Tyrese Maxey and James Harden. There's Anthony Simons and Damian Lillard. There's Devin Booker and Chris Paul, but Chris Paul hasn't been healthy. There's, to me, I think right now, too much is up in the air to say that they wouldn't be a top 5 backcourt on the basis of Steph. I think I would still have them there. Like if you're going for more of a balance, like you don't want that imbalance between star and then like the best player in the backcourt and the second best player. There's a gap there, but that would always exist because Steph is just like this mega human. John Morant, Desmond Bane, like that's certainly the D'Angelo Russell and Anthony Edwards, they're not in that discussion this year. So I think I think they still are. You could make cases on paper for other entries, but I think the only ones that you look at this season and say, well, they might have a case just because the balance would be Cleveland. I think Memphis with John Morant and Desmond Bane. And is that Maxey and Harden have both missed so much time, and Harden didn't look great in his return. So I'm just like, I'm sure I'm missing glaring ones here.
So you're not a baseball guy, right? Like
no.
So the Bill James, the kind of the godfather of like the sabermetric movement in some regards, had this big abstract book, and there was like, he poses questions in it, and one of them was like, what baseball family or what baseball brothers would you want? And well, Joe DiMaggio and Dom DiMaggio would be a good one, or like the Canseco brothers or whatever. And he's like, I would take the Ruth family, because you get Babe Ruth, and who cares who the other guy is, basically. Like, so it's the same argument. We've thought about this exactly the same way. It's like, if I'm getting Steph, give me like whatever else. I mean, and Klay is more than whatever else. I mean, I think it's total. We talked about this last week. It's totally fair to say that like this guy is nowhere near the defender he was. He has a lot more nights where he looks real bad, which is just what happens when you age and have injuries. But he's still at 39% on 10 3-point attempts a game. So like, that's not nothing. I don't know how, like, and in a playoff context, maybe that is on par with the value of someone like Bane or Simons or something like that. It's not that far off. And Steph just makes the difference, because you want the guy that is, and if you're trying to win a championship, like, this gets even easier, because I don't know about almost any of these other guys, other than like, do Holiday and Middleton count? Like, I don't know. And how good is that if they're independent of Giannis? Those are second and third options. Now, like, Steph is a one, with 5 stars after it. Like, so yeah, I think that's a little too hot. But the point's fair. Like, if you want balance, then yeah, I guess that's a different question. But if you just want to have the best backcourt, like, you're not going to get me off of having Steph in the top 5. Like, that's not that tough for me.
It's still not tough. It's less of a sure thing than it was, and Steph is doing way more of the heavy lifting.
Yeah. It's like an 80-20 situation, if that,
We have 2 that are related, so I'll sandwich them together for the Lakers. Christopher, hot or not, LeBron James is no longer a top 10 player, and LA needs to realize this. And then an unbiased Pistons fan in a separate discussion in Discord, in case you're wondering whether I participate in Discord or monitor it, it's trade LeBron and build around AD o'clock.
So the first part, LeBron James is no longer a top 10 player, and LA needs to realize this. That's not hot. I mean, that's factual, I think. And I also think the second part is probably true. I feel like the Lakers know that. And I think even internally, and James and others, I feel like, have alluded over the course of this partnership that, yeah, like, the idea here is that as LeBron sort of sunsets, AD becomes a top 5 player, and he's the guy that carries us, in the post-LeBron era, or, the end of the LeBron era into the post-LeBron era. That looks like a real, like, prescient approach now, as AD is like just rocketing up the MVP, conversation frequency. But I think it's trade LeBron and build around AD o'clock. That's too hot, because they're not going to trade LeBron. It's like a non-starter.
He can't be traded until this summer.
Yeah. If he asks to be traded, that's always been the case, right? If he asks, then you do it. And that's the only scenario I can imagine. I just wonder, like, I can't wrap my head around what the desired return package would be, or the offers would be for LeBron. Because
you trade him to Charlotte for all the picks because they want the gate revenue. That's what happened.
Trade him to the Pelicans for all those picks back, and Dyson Daniels.
No, the Pelicans are smarter than to do that.
So I got crushed. Well, insofar as I ever look at comments, but there was probably a few weeks ago before this AD explosion, and the Lakers were like 2-10 or whatever they were. And I didn't think it was ridiculous to consider trading Davis, because if you're trying to have like a functioning next 5 years, like that's the only way you get there, because he's the only guy you're going to get anything for. That's out the window now. So I think that's probably too hot to start talking about trading AD, because he does look like a top 5-ish guy all of a sudden again. It's been against shitty teams mostly. Like they got the Spurs 3 times in this crazy run. So I think the schedule toughens up. So we'll really see if this AD thing is, oh, wow, we could just put some average guys around him and suddenly we're real serious. But yeah, I think you're never trading LeBron. And I think trading AD, like that ship sailed, I think, probably in the Lakers' minds.
And also, I wouldn't trust, you mentioned this, the sample size is so small. And he was a great number 2 guy and even risky in that role. If I'm trading LeBron, I'm also trading Anthony Davis. Like I'm starting the whole thing over. I can't rebuild my team. That was the eventual goal, but I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that now because of his injury history. And I do think what we're seeing from him now, more unsustainable jump shooting and him shooting what would be like by far and away a career high on unassisted field goal attempts. If he does this for the rest of the season, then maybe it's a discussion we have over the summer, but I think it's LeBron not being a top 10 player, not too hot at all. Like you said, maybe if he like turns like in a playoffs, could he be a top 10 guy for any given stretch? For sure. I think he could still, but over the course of an entire season, probably not, which is like kind of sad to think about, but it was always inevitable. The rebuild around AD is too hot for me, unless we're still talking this way in April, that like AD's just been healthy and this is how he's playing.
Yeah. So, more guard stuff, which this is interesting. I'm glad you get this first, because I struggled with it. This is from Strops. 3 of the 5 best players coming out of the 2022 draft class, so this most recent class, going forward will be shooting guards. And I pose my own question to you, Dan. What even is a shooting guard anymore?
Right. That's why I struggled with this one. I don't know. I think when I think of a shooting guard, I think it's of someone that you can't play at the 1 or up at the 3, like a pure, like it's a one position player where a lot of people consider John Collins just a 4. Or Davis Bertans is just a 4. Like you can't play Davis Bertans at center and hope to get away with that. You're certainly not going to play him at the 3. And 2 guards, it's been increasingly hard to find like someone who is just a 2 guard.
So is Brad Beal like the quintessential shooting guard? That's the first guy that comes to mind for me.
Yeah, that's it. They might be him. Because Zach LaVine, you could get away with at the 3.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it might be a Bradley Beal. And so
Buddy Hield's a 2.
Buddy Hield's a 2. Now Kevin Huerter could be a 3, and Sacramento's used him as a 3 at times. I'm trying to think of Evan Fournier.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Like that sort of ilk. So, but regardless, so the 3 of the 5 best players would be shooting guards in this. So we're talking about who? We're talking about Benedict Mathurin, who I don't think do you consider him just like, oh, he can only play shooting guard?
Oh, it's so early. I don't know yet. I mean, the way he attacks the basket, like he does it's also really wrapped into the question of position is like, who do you guard? That it's more like, who can you defend? And I don't know, like, I know nothing. I'll confess, I don't know anything about Mathurin's defense. I think he has the tools because he's athletic and he's smart offensively. Like he's got real craft, but I don't know what that means defensively. So, I mean, maybe I would think of him first as a shooting guard, don't you think? Like he's got to be a 2.
My whole thing is just like, who are the 2s, the straight 2s we're talking about? So I'm assuming it's him. Would Shaedon Sharpe fall under that?
He feels kind of 3-ish to me. He's like a wing, I think.
Right. And then AJ Griffin?
He's kind of big too. I don't know.
So I'm trying to like, this is just too hot because I can't figure out what positions we're talking about without the names. Because Keegan Murray's not a 2. Dyson Daniels is definitely like, that's not someone who you would consider a 2. And we haven't not seen enough of Johnny Davis to say like, oh, he needs to be in this discussion. I think it's Mathurin, and I would assume, maybe I'm wrong, but like, I'm assuming that Sharpe is actually looped into this because I don't know who would be even just looking at like non-point guards, like who would be the top 3. in this. If
Yeah,
that
I
makes any
think
sense. Because I'm so, like, Jaden Ivey is a 1, so you're gonna have Jaden Ivey there. But like if we're trying to find non-point guards who would be at the top end of this draft outcome, because it's not Tari Eason, like he's just too big. I
Jalen
have Shane
Williams,
Sharp, Benedict Mathurin. Oh,
the
Jalen Williams, that's a good
good
one.
Jalen Williams, but he's kind of I would just call him a wing. Maybe really if you frame it around like instead of shooting guard wings, then I could get on board. Although I think Holmgren, who we've totally forgotten about, as if we're projecting going forward, probably is you'd hope that he's going to be one of the 5 best players in this class. I don't know. You have Banchero, Keegan Murray is a 3-4. So you're really talking Mather and Ivy and Sharp, I think probably. In that case, maybe. I don't know.
Mather and yeah, I mean, I guess that if you want to frame it that way, it wouldn't be too hot. But I think this just reiterates that Matherin's kind of ridiculous, though.
Yeah.
Let's go to this. Next one is from, where are we here? Okay. Rome 8180. Hot or not, the Hornets are the NBA's most depressing franchise.
Not hot. Not hot. Because you just like, well, what are your other candidates? And you run down the
Knicks.
list
That's
of.
it. Like, I think it's the Knicks and the Hornets at this point, right?
Well, but the Knicks at least like the Knicks are better than the Hornets. So that start there. That's less
Do
depressing
the
night
Knicks
to night.
have anyone on their roster who is as good or going to be as good as LaMelo Ball?
No.
That's depressing as shit. Because
Well,
like,
is it more depressing though if you're the Hornets and you just are counting the days till he signs his extension, which he will, and then the second he's eligible, he'll just be like, "Get me out of here." Like that's because it's like the sort of the. I think probably the Knicks are more dysfunctional, but I mean the Hornets there's just nothing there. There's nothing there other than Ball. And if you only care about the one piece, that's cool. But I think that one piece is probably a short timer, unless something drastically changes. I mean, it's like you look at the worst teams. It's like the Rockets, have Green and KPJ and Smith and Şengün, and
they're more depressing than they should be though.
they are. Well, they're just a mess. Like I watched a lot of them against the Sixers last night, and they won. But they play really hard. They're just super disorganized on offense, which is what happens when KPJ and Green are handling the ball most of the time. But like they're exciting and they get a ton of offensive rebounds and they draw a ton of fouls. Like they're the Spurs, Keldon Johnson, Devin Vassell, Wembanyama when he gets there. Like that's cool. The Pistons have a bunch of young talent. The Thunder have a bunch of young talent.
Brooklyn's kind of depressing just because it's like
Brooklyn's like, I don't know what the word would be for. But to me, it's the Hornets. That's not too hot. I mean, I know that the Knicks hurt
the Hornets
hurt you personally more, so this is harder for you to answer.
Right. I was going to say, I think there's a case to be made for the Knicks because they're just so aimless. But like, if you put other people in charge of the organization, you could see the construct that they have now, even if it's not torn down, like you could see it being used more sensibly. Mm-hmm. And they do have all those extra draft picks to go trade for a star if they actually want to, even though they clearly didn't with the Donovan Mitchell stuff. So it is the Hornets. The Kings are not involved in this anymore. And so I do think the Knicks would have to be too. I think it's, and after that, it's like, there's not a lot of franchises that depress me. I'm high on a lot of their futures. Like the Lakers aren't like mega depressing if you have Anthony Davis there. The Timberwolves, like the vibes, I mean, even as D'Angelo Russell's played a little bit better, like the vibes coming out there are depressing. But when you're looking at the actual just directions, the Mavericks would have a case if Luka Doncic didn't exist, but that's a pretty big caveat.
Yeah. I think there are teams that have like, we should create an advanced metric like depression potential, like which the Mavericks might lead in. The Lakers have some of that. Basically any team that there's sort of like a
self-sabotaging themselves. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a cliff looming and like they could go over it if a couple things go wrong. But present depression levels, I think probably Charlotte's got the inside track on that one.
Is this me or you, this next one?
I don't know. I'll ask you. This is from Glad. Hot or not, Dejounte Murray should be the point guard that Atlanta builds around. Talk around the league says Trae isn't a leader. And again, we've got this kind of hazy reports. I don't feel like I really know what happened with him and McMillan in the missed game the other day. But
it was a miscommunication. That's all it was. A private matter is a miscommunication.
Yeah, Trae miscommunicated with Lloyd Pierce a lot too, and then we saw how that. And players don't seem to want to play with him. This is Glad editorializing, not me. And he is selfishly unselfish, not unfair. Uh, Not necessarily looking to trade Trae away, but if an offer comes, it's reasonable. Atlanta should consider it or look to trade him for another superstar. Cough, KD cough. I just want to say before you answer this that I'm really mad at Glad because this was basically the hot or not I was going to throw to you, which was going to be framed around like it's not crazy for Atlanta to consider moving Young and just kind of seeing what might be out there. But I'll
In
throw
a
it to you.
tax dump, just to avoid the luxury tax, because that's what the John Collins conversation has become.
Yeah, right.
This is too hot. Dejounte Murray's been better. I do think Trae is the young that's had to make more is the guy who's had to make more adjustments. Now, is it fair to question his leadership and whether guys want to play with him? Is this style? Look, he has not been nearly as heliocentric this year as in previous years. But like, does the style of a James Harden, of a Luka Doncic, does that grade on the players around him? But then how much of that is on the players and not like, let's put in a coaching staff and infrastructure in place who could deviate? And again, I don't necessarily think Trae Young's play style has been the problem this year. I think it's more so been he's just not nearly as efficient as he normally is. And so does this suggest that he is like more of the awkward where it's harder for him to fit into a larger ecosystem? I still think let's give it more time with Bogdanovich back. This team really needs to open up the spacing in general. I don't think it helps that like you sort of became not redundant, but you overlapped a lot, like too many of the same things with this roster where it's okay. We have Dejounte Murray and Trae Young, which is fine. But we also have John Collins and Clint Capella, and only one of those guys could be used as a screener. And John Collins isn't going to get any real extra touches because now we have Dejounte Murray and Trae Young. So I think that this is a situation that would benefit more from shakeups on the margins. I'm not even talking about just, it feels inevitable that Nate McMillan will be fired, but I'm not even talking about the coach. I'm just saying there needs to be a personnel shift here. And Bogdanovich's absence, I do believe, really was part of that. So let's give it some time there. But this is way too. Trae Young is just like he's an all NBA player. And so it's and there's a better chance he makes more all NBA teams, like another all NBA team moving forward, than it is that you get that from Dejounte Murray.
Yeah.
And so if like you might maybe need to flesh out your roster and the image of Murray more because he gives you, especially if he's not getting to the basket as much, like there's a little bit more limitations on his game. But I can't diagnose what's wrong with Atlanta's offense other than like I think that there's not enough, that the confines in which they work inside the half court, they just feel unnecessarily clumpy at points.
I think if Trae is just making more shots or like hitting him at career levels, like how different is the conversation? You know, if the ball's going in, like then I think things are a lot different. I think so. I agree. This is too hot, but it's only too hot because we have like suspicions, and you're seeing some illusions and from like Sam Amick and I think it was Jeff Schultz, like kind of dragged Young a little bit. And it seems like a lot of the media that has had like interactions with Young, kind of whenever a story like this comes out where it is kind of it's uncertain between player and coach, and there was some kind of disagreement or miscommunication. Sometimes when the media kind of goes to bat for the reporters that are asking the tough questions of Young and sort of indirectly are, kind of like, yeah, we all kind of know, right? The ones that know, if you know, like Trae Young might not be the best guy to be a leader or be around. I don't know that. And that's why this is too hot. But if that is in fact true, then yeah, maybe you don't build around him. But like just in terms of on the court, like Murray's a really good player, but he's not a build around guy. Young is like, a one of what, 5 guys that's like, if he's playing well, your offense is top 5. Like that's right. That is a build around player. And you got to do some finagling to really build well around him because he's small and doesn't defend and dominates the ball. But like, that's doable. But if it's like a non-starter personality wise and everybody's sick of him and nobody wants to play for him, if all that is true, which we don't know, then it's a conversation. But it's too hot as it is because just comparing players, it's like they're just totally different types of players, Murray and Young.
Yeah, I think I need more evidence before I just go that route, though.
Yeah, right. Me too.
Can I throw this one at you? Was the one I came up with based off things I've seen. Hot or not, John Collins is now a salary dump. And the inspiration for this is not my actual take. This is just, I've seen the structure basically of deals that send him to Utah are Jordan Clarkson and Kelly Olynyk in a second round pick. I was listening to Dunked On was talking about, they backed off this. So I want to make that clear. Like they had said, would Duncan Robinson and a first round pick get you John Collins? And so John Collins is 3 years after this one and about $78 million left on his deal. Injured right now. Usage has fallen off a cliff. Touches have fallen off a cliff. Is he more? Is John like is dumping like is trading John Collins a salary dump move? Like, what can you expect realistically to get for John Collins?
It's hard because I'm almost certain that he will be more valuable to whatever team acquires him than he is to the Hawks, just because of all the positional overlap you talked about. But that doesn't really matter as far as what the offers are going to be, because like Team X doesn't give a shit that, they know that they're not going to like, well, to be fair, since we know Collins isn't helping you that much, we're going to like give you we won't ask for, a lot of pick incentive or what. I just don't view Collins as a negative contract. I think he's a tough fit on the Hawks. So it's a little too hot. Like I can't call him a salary dump, but the fact that they haven't moved him suggests that like the offers are not good and are requiring a lot of
value around the draft.
Yeah.
When he was readily available and they still didn't move him.
I don't know. It's a little too hot, but like the longer this goes on, it may just be a fact that there are no, net neutral exchanges possible, or even because like you think of what he's been when he's been good. Like we're not, again, you don't want to weight anything from that Eastern Conference Finals run too heavily, but he was a good defensive player and scored efficiently and played really hard. Like
he's been fine defensively this year too.
Yeah. So the narrative that he's just like a 4 that can't guard anything is that's done a little bit. I think that was fair early in his career, but I can't get there yet. But the market's going to say what it says, and it may be talking a little bit right now.
I think it's mega too hot because I actually think because John Collins' skill set is so, and I get made fun of for saying this, it's so scalable. It's on the Hawks that they failed to make it work, where it's like he's just been so marginalized that someone who is mostly plug and play on offense, yeah, he could shoot the ball better this season. That's been a thing that's plaguing the entire roster. But like you've just beaten down his role to a point where like he's your it's not your fourth option in the conventional sense because Clint Capella is not a number 3, but based off who's going to set a majority of the ball screens. And look, Onyeka Okongwu is still on this roster, and now Bogdan Bogdanovic is back, so it's not like I think they could have gotten more creative with second units and how they used him before Bogdanovic returned. To give Collins more of a central role. Would you give up? And I'll phrase it this way. To me, if they dump him, that's an issue they created for themselves, not just with how they used him, but because they're being too fucking cheap. Because they gave DeAndre Hunter an extension. They extended Clint Capella. Trae Young's on his massive deal. They are thinking about Dejounte Murray's next deal. You have to when you gave up as much as you did to get him. So I understand the realities of that. But if he becomes a salary dump to where you can't get him like actual value, you keep him because he is way more valuable than a salary dump. And if you're salary dumping him, hey, guess what? You're not getting cap space and you're not getting the player that you need on this roster to address all your biggest things. So I'm at like, would you do? This is not, if it takes Olynyk and Clarkson to get him, I know Clarkson's been good for Utah, but I'm doing that immediately.
Yeah. I think I was just thinking this way. I don't know. This could be a hot or not, or maybe it's not a great one, but like if he's on the Mavericks instead of Christian Wood, they're kind of similar players offensively. There's no chance we're talking about why is John Collins still coming off the bench? Like he's starting, and Christian Wood cost a first and like some salary, right? So that's not a dump. The Pistons got I can't fucking remember where Christian Wood used to be.
Rockets.
The Rockets got stuff for him. And Collins, I think probably, maybe that's I don't know if it's a hot take, but John Collins is better than Christian Wood. Is that a hot take? I feel like it shouldn't be.
It's not because he's better defensively.
Right.
And I guess you get Christian Wood probably at a cheaper number moving forward. And there's definitely more of a floor game, like a diverse offensive package for Christian Wood.
Yeah.
But I still think John Collins is easier to fit And like, he doesn't, like, Christian Wood is your 4. Like, when you're playing with another big, it's a Maxi Kleba. But so it's just like, I would still have John Collins. And just like, is this deal really that prohibitive? It's like 20% of the salary cap moving forward. Is it really that prohibitive?
And he's not like, no, I think we're really going to bat for John Collins here, it
Well,
turns out.
because I saw, and there was another theoretical trade package. I talked about this on the previous pod, and I don't, but first of all, coming up with hypothetical trades is tough. And I don't begrudge, like, if that's the excuse me, the Olynyk Clarkson structure was floated basically by Shams. So it's just like, I don't fault people for thinking this way, but one of the packages I saw was Buddy Hield, Jalen Smith, and a second for John Collins. And if that's, first of all, you're not really saving money. Like, Buddy Hield comes off the books a couple years earlier, but like, and you're getting Jalen Smith, who's super cheap the next couple of years. But if that's on the table and you're Indiana, like, why is that not done already? Like, hey, we're about to renegotiate and extend Miles Turner, and we're just going to make a run at this because we have John Collins, Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, and superstar Andrew. I'm getting them hard. So it's just like, I'm just, maybe we're wrong. I want to make that clear. Yeah. I know that there are people who probably watch more Hawks games than us this season, but like, dating back to last season, he just feels like he is, and it's verging on criminally underutilized. That's what it just feels like to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not 1,000 years ago that, like I said, we saw him be a really useful player on a team that won multiple playoff rounds. Like, and he's not 32 years old either. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
And but the thing that I will push back for the two of us on, and you already mentioned it, or we both, whatever, the fact that he wasn't moved in an offseason when he was just projected to be moved, the fact that he wasn't a part of the Dejounte Murray trade and the Spurs were like, oh, we'll prioritize picks and expiring salary, that makes me wonder if we're wrong. I think, to be clear, I think clearly I'm very impassioned about this. I think that we're right, but there's enough noise to where it's, oh yeah, like, if he was that valuable on the market, why hasn't he been moved yet? I will still die on the hill of, well, if there isn't a robust market for him, the Hawks have created that tepid market.
Yeah. Let's see. Are we good, or want me to take us out, or is there any other ones we didn't get to?
No, we hit everything. We'll have the well, you did do one of the mailbag questions in the hot or not phrase from Rome, but that's good. But we'll have more. We'll have an actual mailbag again next week. But this was a fun, instructive exercise as always, and I enjoyed some of the ones that you came up with, and I enjoyed you becoming a New Orleans Pelicans convert mid podcast.
It's done. I can't go back now. If they go on if they have a bad week, I'm gonna be real upset. Yeah. So everybody, thank you for listening. These are always fun. Thank you so much for these hot or nots. They're, like we said last time we did this, and with the mailbag stuff, this is always awesome because it keeps us on our toes, and we like making content that you guys want to, listen to and have discussed. So everybody wins that way. So keep them coming. We'll do these again. In the meantime, tell all your friends. And if you haven't done it yet, I don't know how you're listening to this, but like, subscribe, comment, do all the things you need to do. Follow us on socials. They're if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see them on the bottom right. And thank you for listening. Listen next time. We'll have some more of this stuff for you guys. And I'll take us out with an apology to Jared Allen. I already apologized to New Orleans Pelicans. And last but absolutely not least, on behalf of Dan, we give a parting shout out to the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Frank Ntilikina.